New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.
Hello, hello, hello.
Good afternoon, everybody. Good morning. Good evening. We're here. I'm Gil.
And I'm Robyn.
And this is Rockin the Love. And today, from a little different location, but we are here in Albuquerque, New Mexico, together. Yay. And it's a little bit stressful morning so far.
Okay, so Gil's going to be very cryptic, so I'll just help you all out. You don't have to try to figure this out. This is our bedroom. Those are our pillows. We are sitting on our bed. And we are because somehow I have an injury that in my leg that took me like 20 minutes to walk across the house to the bedroom. So by the time we got here, we decided it was better to do the show from here. So, but that's okay. I know I'm being thought of, prayed for, and all those good things, and that probably I will get up and walk away from this like there was never an injury. So, here we are. How was your week?
My week's been good. A lot going on, but good. Good. We got to sit outside in beautiful weather last night and watched the kids' first football game. And it was quite beauteous after the thunder, lightning, rain, and double rainbows. And so literally by the time we got there wasn't any wetness. It was just dry and 75 degrees kind of thing. Just beautiful.
Which is a big deal here in New Mexico because that's cool and that's a good night. Like we were totally prepared for a summer night. But we had umbrellas in case it rained or it was too hot. So that was fun. Yeah, it's been a busy week. There is a lot going on, and that just seems to be the way of life these days. Yeah, I mean, my intention for the week is to go through some of our boxes because I don't want to be moving into this house until we have to move out.
I hear you. Absolutely. And that's one of those things that continues on trying to figure out balance. What's what, what do we do first?
Yes.
Because, I feel the same way about work at some level. It's like, how can I move into the things that I feel like I need to do without letting them go until they don't happen? I mean, and then I have the car in the driveway, which needs to be fixed. There's another thing.
There's a lot of things.
It's things like that.
There's a lot of loose ends. It's that spiritual center stuff that gets in the way.
Yeah, that's it.
It takes up all the time.
Yeah.
Anyway, okay, so it's been a good week. We have company coming this week and picnics and all kinds of things coming up in the next week and a half, right?
Yeah, got a big Labor Day picnic on Labor Day up in the open space area here in Albuquerque. So we're excited about that.
Yeah, if you're in Albuquerque or anywhere nearby and you want to come join us. You can find information on the Rio Grande Center for Spiritual Living website.
rgcsl.org.
Okay.
There you go. There's a plug. All right. Hi, Shay. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, Shay. So if any of you are joining us because I told you there would be a guest, we don't know if there's going to be a guest. As of this moment, We are the guests, or you are the guests. You are the guest. We are the world.
Some wires were crossed somewhere, and we do not seem to have communication with the guest. So hang in there. We'll reschedule and make it happen.
We're going to talk about happiness. And I'm looking forward to hearing about it because right now my pain is like at a 9 out of 10. So happiness. Okay. But before we do that, we're going to tell you the good news.
The good news.
That's what we like to do because we don't like to focus on the 9 out of 10 in the world. We like to look and see what's going on beneath that. So there's so many good things happening, and we're going to share a few. So what do you got?
All right. Well, now this is unusual. I have a story about a Florida man. Usually any story that begins with Florida man is not a story you really want to hear. But this is one that is cool. This guy has decided that he wants to incite happiness. And so what he does is he puts up little signs that say happiness right alongside or next to other signage. So they're not very big, they're just there. So his intention is to subliminally remind people that happiness is important and that they should be happy. And it made me think about, a couple of years ago when I discovered the Happiness Institute in Berkeley, and that they were studying happiness and how it works and how you can become happy and what you need to do. And so anyway, I thought it was a great story in the sense that here's somebody willing to spend his time and effort to incite happiness in the world.
I love it. That's great. Oh, that just makes me think, like, where have I missed like the subliminal clues? Like now I'm going to be like looking, places to find a little something that makes me happy. I guess I'll find it anyway, even if it's not from him. Anyway, my story is about a Labrador retriever. And this Labrador retriever, I guess apparently they're in Georgia. There's a doggy daycare center that picks up its clients. And the guy was driving to pick up a dog, and there were two dogs there. There were two labs sitting there waiting to be picked up. And he was like, that's odd, and he called the owners, and the owner said, no, it's not the other one's not my dog. It's a stray that's been around, and, the neighborhood's been feeding it. And the guy was like, well, he didn't want to take it because he didn't want to endanger the other dogs. He didn't know if it had shots, if it had fleas, had ticks, had any of that stuff. So he was like, oh, okay. So he put the one dog on the bus that he knows and left the other dog behind. Well, this dog was not having it. The dog chased the guy like almost all the way there. And finally he was like, he pulled over. He was like calling his wife. He called his wife to get a video of the dog chasing the bus. And he's like, trying to figure out, how can I take it home? I can't. I have 9 dogs at home, and, all of that. Anyway, long story short, they posted it on social media and to see if there was anyone had lost the dog and all that. And apparently they had found the dog, and the chip that hadn't been forwarded to whoever the new people were, but it was malnourished and did have a lot of fleas and blah, 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 blah. Anyway, long story short, one of the ladies who had been feeding the dog adopted it, and they're like best friends. But did Michael show the picture?
Yeah. Up there.
And they're happily living together, and the dog.
And that's what the one he was waiting with before?
Yeah.
Huh?
I just love those stories. I mean, I know you know that. I mean, obviously, because I love animals, but I also think it just reminds me really of the oneness, like our dog. Even though our dog is a little moody, When I look at him and when we're having a conversation, I'm so clear that he really does get it. You know what I mean? And there's really more happening there than just like, roll over or sit, whatever.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's just such a great reminder of the beauty and the oneness of all things.
Mhm. That's great. That's great. So there's the dog taking care of itself. I will not be denied. I am going to daycare. Let's go.
That's right. Welcome,
I hear
Brian.
they have treats.
Welcome, Brian. I see you out there. Heard you had a fabulous week and preaching in Las Cruces, speaking and doing a great workshop. Good to have you. Those of you who don't know, Brian's been on our show before. He is an author and a healer and a good person and a good cook. That's all I'm saying. Anyway, so with all of that good news, we're going to take a minute and show you some of the stuff that's going on here at New Thought Media, and we'll be right back here after these messages.
Please help us say thank you to our organizational sponsors, including the Hefferland Foundation, Affiliated New Thought Network, International New Thought Alliance, Science of Mind Archives and Library Foundation, Center for Spiritual Living Denver, Center for Spiritual Living Midtown, New Thought Philadelphia, Planned Happiness Institute, Summit Center for Spiritual Living, One Heart Retreats, Center for Spiritual Living on the Lake, Unity Kitchener, Unity Spiritual Center Ottawa, Om Center for Spiritual Living, Satya Center, Begin Within Ministries, Center for Spiritual Living North Jersey, Unity of Savannah, and the Center for Spiritual Living Seattle, as well as all of our individual donors. Thank you for being part of the New Thought Media Network. Please like, share, and subscribe. New Thought Media Network, positively inspiring.
Welcome back, everybody.
We're back. We're back, and we are so excited to be here. So, our topic today is
Happiness, inciting happiness. How do we do that? How do we make the world a happier place? You ever thought about that? Do you ever do that on purpose? You ever like look for ways to do it? Or if you just look at what you do you see the ways that you do actually allow for happiness to show up more because of your presence?
I do.
Well, how is that?
Well, it's interesting. What came to me is that I do think that I incite happiness sometimes on the planet, and immediately what comes up for me is the times that I don't.
Mm.
Like when somebody's like upset with me or doesn't understand my motive or wants to critique it in a different way. So it's just interesting to note. I mean, I think that's a whole different topic, how we block our happiness, kind of. But I mean, I do think I think I do that, but I don't. Not because I'm trying to do it, but because it's my mission to do it on some level.
Well, how does it feel any different when you're in that place where you're inciting happiness, where you're bringing that happiness to the situation than when you're not? Do you like it better, or is it just the same thing, or what do you think?
I don't. I don't think it's a conscious thing.
Okay.
I mean, for me, I don't. I don't know. What do you think for you? I don't. It's not like I'm like, oh, I'm inciting happiness right now on the planet, and then I get thrown off course. I mean, I think I would hope just by virtue of like the things that I do, the things that we do, that is creating a happier place or a more peaceful planet, or some version of that
Mm-hmm.
euphoria.
Yeah, and I guess then it goes to what is happiness and all of those things. But I think, I mean, I know in general when I am offering a more positive outlook on the world, showing up in a positive way, making a contribution that feels like it's really helpful, that I feel better. Whether or not the other people actually feel better, I don't know, but I do. You know, I mean, so that sort of that happiness thing when I'm living in that place where I'm feeling more happy, I think I'm inciting happiness, but I don't always know. But the thing is, I've incited it in myself.
Interesting. So yeah, so I mean, I think I'm confused by this topic because it was a spur of the moment topic since our guest didn't show up, and but when I hear you say that, I think because you say when you're inciting happiness, and like, do you like decode that somehow? Like, oh, the happiness today. Oh yeah, check. I mean, like, how do you know? Like, for me, it's just part of who I am. I don't have to, I mean, I don't consciously, I mean, I don't know, unless I'm like doing a show and trying to make somebody laugh or something. It's not a conscious thing. It's just part of who I am, I think. I don't know.
Do you ever notice it when you don't have it?
You mean like now?
Yeah.
But I do have it. Look at how happy I am.
Look at me.
I'm just in pain.
Right.
That they're not the same.
So they're not exclusive.
They're exclusive.
Okay. Okay. So we can be happy in the midst of things that really aren't comfortable, things we don't like.
Oh dear God, yes.
Yeah. Yeah. You can be happy through anything. So Shay says, I do say I love myself so much and I want to be healthy and happy. It's definitely intentional. Definitely doesn't always work. Yeah, I mean, I think there's an intentionality in part of it. That's great, Shay. Happiness, your happiness is contagious. I think, and I think that's really true for all of us. I think, and that's kind of what this whole idea is about inciting happiness, is that when we bring our happiness to the world, it cannot help but invite others to also bring forth their happiness and their positivity. And I think there's two ways. There's the idea of, I think we kind of, if we can get in a place where we really live happily, then when things happen, we don't go into a place of non-happiness, if you will. We don't go in a place where everything's terrible and I hate the world and all that stuff. We continue to go through with, well, what can I be happy about? I think it's very tied to gratitude and all of that.
Well, yeah, but I think it's also, or what do you think about this? I think that it may be, obviously, it may be different for different people, but it also may be differently chemically balanced, and if you're prone to not being happy or depression or some kind of bout with that maybe it's not as easy to play in the realm of happiness. I have never been a depressive person. I mean, I've never had that experience of really not being able to get out of a funk. I've always been able to find, I mean, I've always been like, even when I wanted to be that, because a boy would break up with me or something and I'd be like, oh, I'm so sad. And then I'd be like, oh, well. and not that I would be out of the emotion, but I'm like, oh, well, I'm sad. And how long am I going to stay here? I mean, literally my conversations would be, this isn't going to do me any good. I don't like being sad. I may as well be happy. I may as well be, whatever. So I've never, I mean, not that I haven't had, bad moments or down moments or horrible things happen or things that I wish hadn't happened, but I've just never had the experience of not being happy.
That's pretty cool. It's pretty special. Brian commented that being really happy is unconditional. Bringing our light lights up those who see that or feel that. And yes, I definitely think that when we show up in that, that's true. And I'm kind of playing with what you mean by happy is unconditional. But I think what you kind of mean is what sometimes people differentiate between happiness and joy. It's the thing that isn't dependent on anything else. It's just who you are. It's just how you live in the world. It's not like a passing emotion. It doesn't matter what the conditions are when we're really living from that place of joy or that place of a happy life, if you will.
Yeah, because when Brian said that makes total sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I'm saying. He says so much more eloquently and succinctly.
I noticed that. How'd that happen?
Oh.
So just to bring some of you up to date who may not have been here, you are seeing us. We are doing the John and Yoko thing of broadcasting from our bed today. Basically because Robyn's knee or some portion of her leg there close to has decided that it does not want to cooperate today. So once she made it from the office to the bedroom, we decided we were not going to try to get back. So anyway, and yet here we are talking about happiness. And that's part of the whole point. It proves the point. Do we live from that place of happiness, not conditioned about all that's going on, but conditioned on who we are, conditioned on how we choose to show up? And I think that's, when Brian talks about our light lighting up others, I think that's really when it lights up others, is when they're not expecting it at some level. When they're thinking, this is horrible, or, that kind of idea. This is not what I wanted. This isn't good. This is hard work. This is whatever it is. And someone shows up happy in the midst of whatever that is, and it catches them by surprise. Don't you think? Sometimes?
Yeah, well, I also think that that's part of, for me, that's part of the calling of being, a practitioner or a light worker or minister or any of those things that are operating from the place of trusting spirit and knowing the grace and the bounty and the beauty and the glory and the joy of spirit. I mean, it's that realm of happiness that allows, I don't know, allows me to not go deep into some other place.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I'm looking at you thinking. I love it.
I'm not thinking, I was reading.
Oh, okay.
So, Brian, yes, I had habitual down, depression, fear, worry. Then I realized, as in to make real for myself, that who I was being was what kept me feeling down. When I shifted, life.
How life occurred shifted. When I shifted, life shifted, basically. Yeah. Isn't that the truth all the time? You know, as much as I think humanity is prone to trying to figure out what happened out there that made this problem, the reality is that it's all coming forth from us, and how are we going to deal with that? If it's coming forth and it's not pleasant to us, then we have to rethink, well, what are we doing? What can I readjust here? What am I deciding about these situations?
Well, I'm just thinking, and this came up for me on our show yesterday, on my other show yesterday. Like I'm thinking about the political time we're living in, and what comes up for me, I'm thinking about watching the conventions and watching the candidates and watching the people, and one of the conventions felt more joyous to me than others. Or more celebratory. And I mean, I mean, it calls into, for me, like just that spirit of joy and happiness. And when there's that, then there's also respect and kindness.
Well, and that's part of what promotes, if you will, that happiness feeling, because everyone is respected at some level. Everyone is invited to be a part. Everyone is there, and that's the beauty of when we show up from that place. Then it infiltrates everything that's going on around us, and offers other people the opportunity or the permission or whatever it is to join in, or the example even.
Yeah. So let's go back to Brian and what he was saying, because what he said, how life occurs is an inside job. And thank you, Brian. Thank you for sharing your experience of your life and being down and depressive and all that. So where does one go when they can't find that happiness place? How do we? I mean, I like to give practical tools, because it's all good to go, it's all good. But that doesn't always cure what's going on. So I just had another thought. I just had another realization. Maybe I'm happy because during my childhood I wore the sweatshirt all the time with Charlie Brown and or Linus saying, happiness is a warm blanket.
Uh-huh.
And like, but that's how simple it was, and and is, you know what I mean? So I think I really like believed in the Tao of Charles Schultz, like, but really, I mean, like so much of that, so much of those comics and things we trusted in were, good nuggets of life lessons.
Yeah. Well, I think, having experienced living without joy, without happiness particularly at certain times, being in that depressed state. To give somebody a tool is kind of hard. I think what I've learned over time is, first of all, I don't have to take myself that seriously. Just because it feels like crap in this moment is not an indicator of what's really happening in the world. It's just what it feels like in the moment, and also I think realizing that I have a level, I have that control, and I know Brian has talks about this too in some of his stuff, but the basic idea that we have the opportunity to think whatever we want, observe that we're thinking it, and then decide what we're going to do, because our brains aren't actually in charge. We're in charge. The spiritual us is in charge, and we get to go, oh yeah, I'm really pissed off and I'm going to try to run that guy off the road. We can think that, and then we can go, no, not a good idea, not going to do that, that's not helpful. And literally just change what we're doing. And in fact, we can then decide, no, I'm going to go into prayer for that person, or I'm going to drive up beside them and throw them a bottle of water through their window. I don't know. We're going to do something nice for them for whatever reason. I don't know if bottle through the window would express that.
And she says, depends on the kind of childhood you had. I'll go back to that in a second. And Brian said, that which notices the sadness, depression, anger, fear is always bigger than what it's noticing.
So that's sort of that idea that the part of us that has that ability is, if in some circles we might say that's the self with the capital S. That's the spiritual self. That's the whatever it is. I am more than this self. Right. And
I think that's true. And I think that's one of the things that, depending on how your childhood was, how you deal with it, because you don't have all the same skills in childhood that we do in adulthood. And some of us don't have them in adulthood, but for sure in childhood, you haven't had all those experiences. But I have to say, my childhood, not that it was bad. It wasn't bad, but textbook wasn't good either. No, seriously. And I think it's really interesting because when I tell people about my childhood, they're like, oh my God, how'd you get through this? How'd you get through that? How'd you get through this? So there was enough of that could be, what do you say?
Could have been internalized and turned into a lot of sadness, anger, frustration, whatever.
Yeah. And I will say, as a child, this is not me tooting my own horn, and like people were constantly telling me, but I was constantly hearing them telling my mom or parents, oh my God, how does she get through those things? How does she do this? And one time they were so worried because of everything that was going on in our life that we went to a psychologist. And at the end of the appointment, she was like, oh my God, well, if you ever need anything, just come to me. But it looks like you have it handled. And not that I did, but what I think I interpret that to mean now is that I didn't internalize it in the way that it defined who I was.
Right.
It wasn't like because of that, I felt like I couldn't succeed, or I felt, downtrodden and blah, blah, blah. whatever it was is somehow my spirit shined through that, my knowingness as a child or whatever. And I don't know why, and I don't know how. And I know that that doesn't necessarily happen to a lot of kids, or maybe it does. We just don't hear about those kids, maybe. But I just say that to say, as a question, does it depend on your childhood, or what does it depend on? What is that? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Does it depend on your experience,
Your
which is basically
circumstances.
your childhood, your experience, your circumstances, your life, or does it depend on how we have
How you navigate.
how we've chosen to cope with that? And that's not saying that there's any fault in there, because I think many of us either were not gifted with a way of seeing the world, or did not have the support to see the world in a different way than what was happening in our heads,
Or even, yes, but even for me, it may have been my survival tool. Everybody has their survival tool to get out of the moment, right? And that just may have been mine. And why or how or whatever, I knew that that I was more than that. I don't know. It's very interesting though, because it's like, do our circumstances define us? Yes. No. Even maybe. I mean, obviously, scientifically, when your circumstances
generally have an impact
on
of
who
some
you are.
kind.
Yeah, exactly. Oof.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, it's just interesting. But the thing is, now we know what we know. I mean, we know consciously what we know, and what we're open to learning, or who we're open to becoming. And I love it. I love when Shay talks about it, that her spirit is infectious, her joy, her happiness, because I think that's, on some level, that's true for all of us if we allow it. I think it's the level at which we allow it to be.
Yeah, another thing that was coming to me about this was, we talk about in New Thought, Centers for Spiritual Living and Unity, in those places, like, people that come often are adults in terms of showing up in a movie, and possibly slightly older adults. I mean, they've been through a period of their younger years. And I think, some of that is about how people have been able to deal with this, that we hadn't discovered a different way to deal with it. Many people had a certain way that they learned from their parents, and they absorbed it, and that's what they did. And they had an experience with Sunday school or whatever it was that they were brought up in, and some of those were really good and some of those really weren't. And to find a place where you could expand the understanding and get a real different view of what is my place in the world, what does all this mean, shifts our ability to navigate it.
Yeah. It's a puzzlement.
But we keep learning more and more about trauma and how that affects people, particularly traumatic experiences, and how that will shift the brain patterns and all kinds of stuff going on. So, there's some very real physical / emotional things that go on within us, that may require more insight into to move through than others, is what I'm trying to say. Sometimes yeah, it's not simple sometimes.
No, it's not. And I think that goes to, so we Gil and I were speaking about a friend, and with another friend yesterday, about a friend who has tried to change all kinds of behaviors and hasn't succeeded, and been through intensive programs and thousands of dollars and all of these things. And, I was saying there's a level at which they are so committed to being, well, just doesn't work for me. Nope. Nobody can fix me.
Yeah, I am so damaged. I am so whatever.
I knew, and they're committed to outsmarting everything. They have therapy and they've had therapy for years, and they end up making the therapist their friend. And, so every time they succeed in being right about, yep, nobody could do it, and it's like, I think what's beautiful about so many people in our CSL or any new thought movements, any kind of progressive thing, is that there is a level at which we're open and committed to learning more and, opening up to truly what is our highest good.
Yeah, it's kind of a conundrum, because on the one hand, one of the tenets of this kind of spirituality is, and I think many people who are on a really dedicated spiritual path, they begin to discover, hey, I've been created this incredible being, right?
Right.
And
right.
I'm so special, and I'm so this, and somehow that combines and allows for the ability to go, man, I don't know crap. It's kind of a weird thing, when you think about it.
Yeah, but even
I'm willing to learn all kinds of new stuff, and change how I want. So sorry.
It's okay.
I just talked over you, but it was fun.
Yes, it must be fun because it happens often.
Oh.
And yes, and yes. Nice. Oh, welcome, John. Oh, self-love brings happiness for him. Okay. Shay's gonna disagree. So good.
All right.
We love that. Yes, I disagree with a couple of statements here about the choice to control the mind or the observer being always more prevalent than the experience because of my experience with the traumatized brain. Takes a lot to reprogram, the crap. Yes, I'm agreeing for you. We totally agree. Living with traumatized kids who have been adopted and were in the foster care system. The traumatized brain, I think, is a whole different beast. I really do. So I think we agree on that.
Yeah, I think there's room for all of it, and a lot of the things that, when I talk about things, I'm thinking of people who are generally in good mental health, if you will.
Yeah, but I think Shay's referring to some of the youth part and growing up, and it depends on your childhood, because and I agree, I really do. And I will say to that, my father was a drug addict, a drug dealer, spent time in and out of jail. And on whatever level, it didn't traumatize me in a way that held me back. There's obviously lots of other parts to that story, that could have been, I don't know, I could have turned out a lot worse. That's all I'm saying. No, but you know what I mean? I could have it could have held me back into thinking that was who I am, or that affected me, or that he didn't love me because of this, or I wasn't cared for, or, all of those things. Whatever. And we don't have to go into it, because I do agree with you. I do agree with you on that. And I'm just saying that for some reason, that's not what happened. So yeah. So it obviously, spirit works in mysterious ways. I don't know how that happened, but I think it did. Ah, so happiness. So how do you get it when you don't have it?
Good question.
Shay knows.
Shay.
Brian knows. John knows. I think, well, maybe John said it. Self-love brings happiness for him. Yeah. Yeah.
Thanks, Brian. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and everybody's path is their path. That's the other piece. And I think that's another thing that I've learned over time is that there are a lot of tools and techniques and suggestions and people to read and all that stuff. And all of it brings something to the table, but none of it, I mean, not any one thing or any three things even are going to work for everybody in the same way, or at least not without some movement and growth and changes and understanding and finding out about what's going on. I mean, you know, when we can realize where things are coming from because we've had this experience, then that shifts our ability to actually see through it. And all these different modalities will be helpful in different ways, but you know, it's a combination of them that ultimately allows us each to find our way to where we're going and to bring happiness.
Yes. Yes.
So John says, you mentioned CSLs and Shea Bird mentions healing modalities, and I believe doing the work one needs to do in whatever modality brings healing, release, and in my case, letting go of toxic relationships. Yeah, and it's not easy for anyone, is it?
Jay says, for me, it was quitting all the vices, getting out of denial, and dealing with it all head on. Feeling my feelings and doing tons of spiritual work in a nutshell. Also, no contact with the abusers.
Well, yeah, and I mean, you mentioned vices, and I think so much of that is just our attempt to not feel whatever that thing was, right? I mean, whatever something is in there that we don't want to look at. So,
well, and at the end of the day, I think it goes back to what John says in that finding self-love brings happiness for him. And I mean, that's the same for Shay in that by doing that work, she was loving herself more.
right.
And so what my takeaway from all of those are that really when we find it within ourselves, then we'll begin to see it out in the world. And we'll begin to be it and to bring it and to share it and to
Right. It will begin to radiate from us, out of us, because that's where it's always been.
right.
And once we find it, we can then radiate it. And that radiation shifts the vibrational level. And that
Absolutely.
shifts for each and every person that we're in contact with in whatever way, whether we wrote a book or whether we see them in person and have a chat or whether they find a recording of us online. It doesn't matter. You know, however this interaction happens, if we're functioning at a vibrational level that is higher and supportive of other people, then that's going to be translated.
Yeah. And Shay said, I reprogrammed myself now. I reprogrammed myself. Now I love myself and others.
I love myself so much
That I could love you so much.
that you could love you so much.
That you could start loving me. There you go. That's our song for the day. But it's true, right?
Mm-hmm.
I love myself so much that I could love you so much, that you could love you so much, that you could start loving me. And it's reciprocal, right?
Right.
I mean,
it's really the simple story of circulation is right in that little, the little verse there. And, sometimes we try to make it so damn complicated.
Yeah.
But as Shay said, I had to get through this to love myself. John says, when I love myself, I feel more blah, blah, blah. Yes. And when we do that, then we don't dump our crap on other people and we don't do that stuff. And they begin to have the space to love themselves. I mean,
Yes.
changes it all. So there we go.
That is the essence of Rockin the Love. When we can rock the love out there in that way. And, even with the people that we don't understand or aren't necessarily happy, can we love them enough for them to love themselves so much?
Whew. That is a tall order sometimes.
It is. It's a good thing we're sitting on the bed. I need a nap.
I know.
It's a lot of love.
I'm like,
It's got
oh
a
my
whole lot of love.
gosh.
Anyway, that's the story on happiness for today. We are so grateful and happy that you were here with us. You all are so insightful. I love you all.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
It's fun.
Are rocking the love. And even those of you out there that didn't speak, because we see your numbers. We see you out there. Don't think you're hiding. We're giving you the mandate to go out and rock the love this week and find that place of happiness in your life and then pass it on. And we'll see you next week, maybe with a guest.
Who knows? But we'll be rocking the love.
Yeah. So join us and we'll see you then. Rock the love, everybody. Bye.